Greetings, Pastor Ethan here from Leroy Covenant Church. God's grace, mercy, and peace to you no matter where you're at today and whenever you watch this. I didn't want to spend time today in a particular passage or a book of the Bible and dig into that, but what I wanted to do was more give you some practical advice from experiences that I've had in my life for the purpose of helping you in the future, should you find yourself in a particular situation. So, what I'm talking about today is helping people and ministering to people that are going through or starting to go through some sort of crisis or a tragedy. So, examples of that would be finding yourself in a situation where you are driving to a relative's house because they just learned that their husband or wife died in a car crash or died from cancer, or getting a phone call that your brother just lost and his wife just lost their newborn baby and they're asking you to come over to the house. So a situation like that where you could be called as a friend or a family member or even just kind of a stranger who finds himself in a position where you are ministering to somebody that has just gotten some of the worst news in their life or gone through something that no one should have to go through. And what do you do in those situations? And the reason I want to speak about this today is because God has given me the opportunity to minister to people in these types of situations. I've been a police chaplain for about 6.5 years now, and I've been called out on dozens and dozens of scenes where there have just been a number of tragedies. And so I wanted to just share with you briefly and generally some of the experiences that I have had and some of the lessons that I have learned to hope to give you a few pointers should you find yourself getting a phone call like that someday from a loved one or a friend, and how that may help you, because what we do in those situations, what we say or what we don't say, can have a tremendous impact on not only the situation but all those involved in a particular person or friend or family member. So, just as a little bit of background, I have served a number of different agencies as a police chaplain, and some of the things that I've experienced are confidential, and I can't share all the details. But I have been called out on a number of very tragic scenes, from workplace deaths to suicides to the loss of newborn babies. To just deadly accidents that have happened, and everything in between, and all the above. And they're very difficult to go to. And I've had to learn that how to prepare myself, and through classes and education experience, how and what to say in these situations, and also what not to say and do in these situations. So I wanted to give you some examples today. So this is all for your benefit, with the hope that you can be a great ministry of presence to someone someday. So that is kind of what a chaplain does. We practice the ministry of presence. Meaning that we don't always have to use words, but just being there with someone when they're grieving or going through a hard time, and just emanating the love and care that comes from our relationship with God is super important. And that's what we call a ministry of presence. And you can do that as well in whatever situation you may face. Sometimes words just need to be few, and you just need to sit with someone in that moment. And that's probably one of the biggest things I can tell you to do, is to practice that. But we'll get into that a little bit more. So let's start off like right away with just the basics. You somehow are communicated with that someone you know well, or even if it's someone you don't know well, just experienced incredible tragedy or loss, and you are called into that situation in some way, shape, or form to help. Uh, how do you begin that process? My first advice to you is that as soon as you get off the phone or as soon as you get that message, you start praying. You start getting your heart and mind right, for yourself, but also that you are praying for the other person in the situation you are about to go into. So, first, you want to make yourself right, because you could be coming from a place where uh, you've had a really great day and everything's going really well, and you're just not in kind of a somber mood. And so, you may show up to a situation where you're just not prepared to get onto that level with them. Or you may be coming from a very frustrating, stressful situation, and you got to somehow find a way to leave that behind so that you can enter into this and be fully present there. So start praying and centering yourself and asking God to give you a very understanding, a very empathetic, a very compassionate heart, because likely you are going into a situation where there is at least one person, if not more, who are probably having the worst day of their life. And how are you going to minister them? So you want to start with yourself and preparing yourself. But you also want to pray for them that God's spirit and his presence and his love will be with them and will be in the interactions that you are to have, and that God would just really shine his grace and his peace, because that's what we do at the end of the day. We trust in an almighty, compassionate, loving God who is with us in every situation of life. The second thing would be is when the next step would be is when you actually get there. You want to be able to establish what is going on. You try not to be overwhelmed by um, all the little details and everything going on. You want to be able to just kind of figure stuff out right away in the practical things. So, where is the person who or persons who are most affected? Where are they at physically, geographically? Are they in the living room? Do they have family with them? Or did they go for a walk? Where are they? Because you want to look after their physical well-being, that someone's around them, that they're taken care of, and that they are safe. The second thing is you want to just get an idea of who all is there. Do you are you the first kind of responder, or are there other family members? Are there other friends there? Is there a pastor on the way? You kind of want to get an idea of who is there for a support system. And if you kind of put in the back of your brain that if you kind of start to realize that it does not seem like the support system that should be there is there, then see what you can do to start that process. Try to make some phone calls or talk to somebody. And then as you approach the person who is suffering or who is the greatest affected, realize that they are probably in some sort of state of shock, whether more in a medical stand or a medical definition of it, or maybe just some other kind of form of just being shocked by the news. Just realize that their mind is probably not going to be operating the way your mind is. They're not going to be thinking incredibly logical or practical or rational at that time. They're overcome by emotions. They're overcome by the situation. So whatever you say to them, if you say something to them, make sure it is simple. Make sure it is direct and just easily understandable and short. Okay, no long conversations, no long questions. Just start off very simple, very straightforward. But even before you do say anything, I would advise that you get physically near them and you get on their level. That you are eye to eye with them. If they're on the floor, get on the floor. If they're sitting on a chair, sit on a chair or kneel down next to them. You get in the position that they are in and show some kind of physical connection if you feel like it's appropriate. A hand on the shoulder, a hand on their hand. If you know them well, maybe give them a hug. And don't say anything right away. Just be there for them. And that was probably the thing that I could say the most is that oftentimes the more I open my mouth in those situations, the more I put my foot in my mouth and I say something that just did not help the situation at all. So when you first get there, just really be a presence of love and care for them and somehow show that to them in a physical way, mimic where they are at. And then if you have to say something, like we said, talk simply, and basic stuff, and keep it short and calm and compassionate and empathetic. This is not the time to go into deep theological discussions or to give your opinion on things. This is a time to just be with them and care for them and make sure they are safe and get them through that hardest moment, one breath at a time. In fact, even tell them, let's just worry about one thing at a time. We are there. Or you are there. You are there to love them and care for them, and that they just let's focus on one thing at a time. Say a prayer for them if you feel like it's appropriate. ask them, can I get you a Kleenex? Can I get you some water? Would you like to make a phone call somewhere? Would you like to sit down over here? Make sure that they are safe and that they feel supported and loved. Um, and then maybe if you want to a little bit later ask some questions about, like, if it was a loved one who died, just be like, hey, can you tell me a little bit about them? If you feel like, because sometimes reflecting on the person can actually help them process it a little bit, because they'll start being like, what school were they involved in, what kind of sports, what did they love to do, because it kind of brings them some smiling memories. It can be hard, but I also feel like it opens them up a little bit, but you have to judge that. But if you feel like you can ask a question like that. But another thing that you want to do about this time is to go back at what we talked about at the beginning. Who is there for support? Because you may only be a temporary person for support. You may only be able to stay in a couple hours. So who is going to be there to take care of them after you leave? Do they have a safe place to sleep tonight? If, like, they lost their home in a fire, maybe try to connect with first responders, the police, or somebody that can call, like Salvation Army or the Red Cross or somebody to take care of them, because they're not in a situation where they can do that themselves or they're going to feel comfortable. So what can you do to help them in a practical way? And that's basically how it is. But some of the things that you don't want to do, you don't want to give them um, these kind of pious platitude answers where you're just like, well, God really needed them. If the person had passed, they must have needed them more up there, or there was a place for them, like that, or something that you feel like is just very spiritual, but it's bad theology. It does not help at all. Don't say stuff like that, and don't say it could have been worse. Don't say things along those lines. Just do not let those words come out of your mouth. Don't try to explain it. And if they ask you, why did this happen, really, they're crying out of anguish and out of grief. And just be honest with them. I don't really know. I know it's this world is just filled with so many bad things, and you have my deepest condolences. I don't understand anything either. But then what you can do is you can reassure them, but I do know God is loving. I do know He is sovereign. I do know that He is good. When they start asking questions about, well, like, are they in heaven, or they start getting into these deeper things, really they are expressing their anguish, they are expressing their grief. And as much as you want to try to give like this biblically based pastoral answer, that, like, that you may have learned in seminary or something, just keep it really simple. Like, hey, are they in heaven? Just be like, you know what, that's a really good question. I don't know. I was not there in their last moments with God, but I do know He is sovereign. I do know He is loving. I do know He is good. Something along those lines. Don't act like you know it all. That's not a time and place for that. It's not a time and place to argue. Really, you are there to be a ministry of presence that is full of love and compassion and empathy. Take care of the basic needs. Keep things simple. Make sure they are cared for, and just love them and tell them you're going to pray for them. And if you tell them that, ask them, can I pray for you? And just ask that the God of peace and love would wrap them in His arms and would walk them through this difficult time. Finally, if you do need to leave, give them a contact number, or give it to somebody, even better, give it to somebody who's there next to them who is not intimately involved. Because people who are going through this crisis stuff, they can take a number and put it away and forget about it because they're just so overwhelmed. But let them know that you are there for them and that they can call anytime, and just keep praying for them. So I hope that helped a little bit today. I'm sorry it got a little bit longer than I wanted it to get, but that's just some basic things that I have learned to do and not to do. And I'm talking from experience too. Some things that I've really regretted, some things that I feel like have worked. So in all this, you are being a light of Jesus' love and presence to them. And you are in a position to just really grace them with that, and it is a blessed sacred opportunity. So give it before God, prepare your heart and mind, and just keep on loving them and praying for them. So if you ever get called to that, may God work through you and in that situation to bring about good for his glory. In Jesus' name, amen.